Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Pink Print Podcast. Today, we are here with Alex Kanter, Soulcycle instructor, therapist, and new mom. I'm so excited to be sitting with Alex today. She's one of my best friends. She really is my older sister. So I'm so excited to dive in with you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you both for having me.
I have a feeling this is going to be a really great conversation based on the brief conversation we had before.
Yeah, we had to stop. We were like, save it for the podcast.
I know.
Okay, so take us back before mom life. Take us back to DC, 18 years old, in Washington at GW. How did you start your Soulcycle career? You were the youngest Soulcycle instructor ever, right?
At 18? One of.
Okay, one of.
So
Not 18, but.
It actually was 2014. So 10 years ago this summer, I was in New York City for a beauty and fashion PR internship, which lasted about 4 weeks. And the best thing I got out of it before I left, I literally ran home. My sister and I, shout out to my sister. I knew that this was going to come up right at the beginning. If you didn't listen to her podcast, please do. Pink Print Pod. Emily Kanter, she teaches at Fuse House and Reforming Pilates. I love my sister. We have this song. I don't know if you guys know Paramore, Ain't It Fun?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. We always used to joke because I literally ran home. It's like, don't go crying to your mama because you're all alone in the real world. That was me. I ran out of my PR internship from New York City. I hated it. But the one thing that I did take away was I went to Soulcycle NoHo. It was Parker's class, 10:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. I love my daddy P. And everybody dropped their elbows and I flew backwards. And I was just like, I love this. I had come from a dance background. My entire life loved movement. It was so healing for me. And I, for the first time in a really long time, was like, wow, this is so much more than just working out to check off a box. I felt like it literally touched my soul, something 100%. Deeper. Yeah. And I was so hooked. So I joke that while the internship did not pan out, Soulcycle became this very big presence in my life from the get-go. And back in the day, we didn't have Soulcycle in Miami here.
Yeah.
So Did it start just in New York?
So it started in New York. They had one studio on the Upper West Side. The founders, Julie and Elizabeth, they really were looking to create community in the fitness industry. And so they really did that. And fortunately, I was able to be trained by the best of the best in the industry. Janet Fitzgerald, Melanie Griffith, they're big names at Soulcycle, and I love them very much. In case anybody listening here knows them, they are absolutely incredible. But, I immediately knew this is something, when you find something or you have an experience where you're like, I was meant for this. I was born for this. This is a part of me that I've just rediscovered. That's really what it was. And so I went back to school at GW and I was president of my sorority sophomore year. And I was just kind of living my life in this way that I was telling both of you before we started this podcast officially. I spent a lot of time in my life in my adolescence really focused on the expectation of who I thought I was supposed to be, how I thought I was supposed to be. I remember being in elementary school and people would write in your yearbook silly little things and someone would write you're so energetic, you're happy all the time.
So true.
Yeah. But yes and no. I really took that on as my responsibility to be everything that I thought I was supposed to be, right? And Soulcycle was one of the first places in my life that I actually was completely just me. I didn't have to do anything but listen to the rhythm and allow myself to put underneath me in resistance exactly what I needed to catch the rhythm. And that's what keeps me there now. So I'm rounding out on 9 years as an instructor, 10 years riding.
That's incredibly long.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
When did Soulcycle start?
It started in 2006.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
It started in 2006.
A long time ago.
Yeah. Talk about not overnight success.
Yeah. I mean, there are some amazing, things out there about what Julie and Elizabeth did, but they were both young moms. They had just had their babies. Julie, at least, had just had her daughter, Phoebe, and she started this company with her business partner. And I now, as a new mom, I can imagine just how much power and how much love has to go into that kind of endeavor. And especially, now just being where I am with Jack, my baby son, Tia Kathy is how I actually should have referred to you on this podcast today. But, you know, like it really is, it was a labor of love. And I think that at the end of the day, no matter where you go across the markets or no matter what time or what day you step into a studio, at least for me in my class, I'm really trying to create that original feeling of what Soulcycle is at its best, which is how I felt in 2014 when I walked into that studio and I said to myself, wow, I can just be me where I am, as I am, exactly as I am, and just kind of meet myself where I was in that moment, you know? And that's what it still is for me, teaching. But I feel like I didn't even answer your question.
No, so how did you like
become an instructor?
Back in DC, how did you become an instructor?
I got back to DC and I was like, I miss this shit. So I found, you know, the cycling classes at Equinox, which was right around the corner from GW, which, you know, GW is not necessarily the most campusy campus, but fortunately we had Equinox there. So, and I think at the time it was Sports Club LA. So many stories. Yeah. Another story for another day for you privately, Kat. But like met a cool guy who was like, you should do the cycling because you love Soulcycle. And so I started going to the cycling classes there, bought a pair of shoes, and I came back to Miami for a time and I was going to Flywheel, rest in peace.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
No
we
shade.
had Annabelle on here before.
No shade, but like, yeah. And I love Annabelle. And she's amazing for doing Tasha. I have my baby candle. Oh, yes. My welcome home baby candle.
We have a million candles.
Yeah. Shout out to Tasha. We love them. So basically, I went back to school and I heard that Soulcycle was opening up. I ended up riding at the beginning of when they, you know, first came. It was Soulcycle DC, like OG 2400 M Street or 2401 or something like that. It was a block away from where I lived off campus. And I started riding every day and talk about, you know, the expectation. I was living this one life as a, you know, president of my sorority, Kappa Kappa Gamma, like doing the whole thing, going out to, at GW, we went out to clubs and we went out to lounges. Shadow Room. It was, what was it? It was opera on Thursday night, Cities Friday, and then Shadow Room on Saturday. And I was exhausted. I was exhausted. And also growing up in Miami, you know, we went out a little bit earlier. So I really wasn't at that stage of my life anymore where I wanted to be going out. So instead, you know, I started going to Soulcycle. I started meeting people who were different ages, from different backgrounds, different places. I had friends who were in their, you know, 40s. Now those friends have kids who are in elementary school, middle school, and I'm still connecting with them and learning from them, and I'm thinking about them right now. And it's really amazing because that's what Soulcycle did for me. It brought me to myself, but it also brought me this greater sense of community. Yeah. And it's still doing that, right? But I decided that I wanted a better excuse to not have to go out to Shadow Room on Saturday night. Half joking. I really just said to myself, this is what I want to do right now. And I was actually studying for law school. I was taking the LSAT. I took the LSAT. Wow. I did the full training. And I basically called my parents and I was like, so I'm not going to go to law school, but I want to be a Soulcycle instructor.
And your mom, I know her voice. She's like, okay.
She was like, okay. Yeah. And my dad is like, what is Soulcycle? Yeah. I knew that they really didn't do part-time at the time. So I basically told the talent team, when they were recruiting, when they were going through auditions, I said, I will change schools. I will move anywhere. I will do anything. Just put me in, coach. Like, I will teach until my butt falls off. Like, I will hustle so hard. You know, just put me in. And so they were like,
you just loved it that much.
I did. I was like, it was a full, I think, semester and a half of me riding daily, you know, sometimes 2 times a day, which like you could say it's a little bit crazy, but it was more about like I was studying the craft. And I know that sounds crazy too.
No, it doesn't.
But I would sit after with the instructor who I loved at the time. Shout out to Garrett, who also has a baby daughter now. And he was so passionate about using resistance. He was very much an athlete. And for me, I was like, here is this, you know, intersection between athleticism and artistry, of music and dance and movement. And I was like, I would crush this shit. Like, I really want to do this. I've never had anything that made me want to have a career. And here I was, like, wheels turning, pun intended, like in my head of, wow, like, I want to do this. I want to be able to talk to people about, you know, getting stronger. I want to be able to be honest in a way that, you know, reaches someone else. It all goes back to what I'm doing now. Like, I'm literally preaching out loud to myself. And when someone comes up to me after a class and they say, you know, this song resonated with me, or these lyrics resonated with me, or something that you said resonated with me, that's my way of saying you're not alone, because I'm talking to myself the whole time. I'm playing stuff that I want to hear. If it's raining outside and it's a Thursday, the playlist is going to be completely different than, you know, if I would have woken up and it's sunny and it's a Monday.
Right.
Like, it really is, I am curating a feeling for myself, and it's what do I want to put out into the world today, and what do I want to take back, and what do I want to use to become a better, stronger person. And so when I see people in my class, like when you've come in, Kat, and you've said, you know, that really touched me, or that really did something for me, that is a validation for me that I'm not alone in whatever I'm going through and whatever I'm dealing with. And that's my why, you know? And it's for the younger version of myself. I don't know if you were in class the other day, but I said, and I've been thinking about this visual, and it's part therapy induced as well, because I did go back to school after 4 years to become a therapist. I wanted to build on what I'd already been doing, but I've had this visual for so long of like walking into a room and seeing this younger version of myself, like sitting at the end of the table and coming in and like pulling out the chair and sitting down and reaching my hand across to that younger self, and just kind of not only making peace, but kind of reaching across the table and saying, like, I understand how you were feeling at the time. I understand the things that you were going through. I understand that you were kind of creating this pressure of expectation on yourself of how you needed to move through the world and how you were supposed to feel and things you were supposed to do and say and how you were supposed to be. And I've really, in a lot of ways through Soulcycle, in these very quiet moments where I'm just playing this music that really like speaks to what I need in that moment and where I am in my life, like I really have mended this relationship with myself, or my younger self, that has been spanning for like 10 years. And it has to do with like prior relationships, my experience of like falling in love for the first time. And wow, we're really like getting into it, you know? And like meeting my husband in college and going for Soulcycle and deciding the path that I wanted to be on, and kind of letting it unravel and finding the best parts of me, like as I am in my own eyes, right? Like not of how I expect myself to be for the world. That is like my story, right? Of everything combined. So I know that you asked me about how I got into Soulcycle, but it really was. And so on paper, like I said, fuck it. I'm going to get on a plane from Miami, because I came home from abroad deciding that I wanted to be a Soulcycle instructor, even though everybody was like, you can't do it. You can't do it. You have to finish school first. I said, watch me. And I flew to DC for auditions because I knew I wanted to try out for the DC market. And I knew also that I was going to be open to going wherever they wanted me to be. Yeah. And I said what I told you guys. Like I said, put me in, coach. I think I had a fever the night before I auditioned. I was staying at a friend's apartment. And I went in and I was like, I am going to just be myself, but times 100, and I'm going to give it everything I've got. And for the first time in my life, I swear to you guys, I walked out saying I gave it everything that I had.
That you had.
I knew I was meant to do this, and so I was just real, and I was really honest, and I was myself on blast, and I got it. And
I love like your passion.
Thank you.
And your drive.
It's hard because Miami in the summer it's not the same from what I hear it is during the season. We're working on it, but what I can say as a market, you know, like it's hard. Like Miami, it's not currently as culty, I'd say, as it is in New York City.
No, it's not. I can say, because I don't work at Soulcycle, I'm going to say it. I lived in New York for a summer and would obviously ride like every single day. I ride here, have been for the past like almost not 10 years, but you took me to my first Soulcycle class with Zach in Coral Gables.
Wow.
Yeah, long time ago. And
I think you're the one who got me into Soulcycle.
Because of her. I've been riding for a long time.
See? It's like a
it is.
Of course.
It is.
It's a community.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I remember like New York is really just something else. Like, I walked into that room and it was the same feeling. Like, these are all athletes, like, working together. Like, they literally want you to work together. I remember, like, I took like a kins class, which obviously doesn't work at Soul anymore. But
but he also really
it was like an
participated
insane
in that community. Yeah.
And I remember, like, I would always sit in the back row because it was like the fucking craziest.
No, I was way too scared to.
Yeah.
First of all, there was never fucking availability.
So I would go, and I sat in the back row, and I remember, like, I sat down, and the girl next to me was like, "Get up, like, you got this." Like, and I remember being like, "Fuck, I got it." Like, she's making me, like, help her. Like, we have to help each other right now. And ever since that day, like, it sounds crazy, but every time I ride, I'm like, I either, like, have to sit down and show people it's okay to sit down, or get the fuck up and be like, you all got this too. So I know, like, it sounds crazy, but I know every move I make in there, like, it's someone else is watching me, and it's going to motivate them for whatever decision they want to make. But it's just such a beautiful feeling. But back to the point, it's really different in New York.
No, I think that goes to say, like, how powerful the energy is, like, how it translates from one person to the other, and how the community, like, makes all the difference, which is why Soulcycle was so successful, and that's why you were also so drawn to it, and so passionate to, like, do this through their, you know.
So on New York, I'll say this: the energy of the instructors, like the instructors in Miami, myself included, like, we're bringing it. I think part of it is figuring out what that looks like in Miami. You know, Miami is a different kind of city. Everybody is able to be outside, whereas in New York, you know, you're forced to be inside a lot of the time. But I will say this: you hear my passion every single time that I step into my room. It really doesn't matter if there are 2 people or there are 20 or there are 60. I am there because of my why. And so I taught class this morning, and it was amazing. Like, it was beautiful. And I looked out, and it wasn't a big class, but I am so there for it. And I think that it will be very interesting to see what it's like, you know, during the season, but we are building it, you know? And that's the thing. It's enough for me. Like, anywhere I am, any place I teach, I've taught at 35 plus studios at this point. I used to be like a community builder. So they'd send me to one studio, I'd build it, and then I'd go to the next one.
So this is what you're so good at.
I love it. I love it. And so I am there just whenever anybody wants to try it. If someone's in Miami and they're like, I've heard of Soulcycle, I want to go to Soulcycle, I actually coach my class for everyone to sit in the saddle until you get the beat, you know, and that you can do anywhere. And any instructor that you talk to is so happy for you to do that. Sit down, find your rhythm, find your resistance, and then you add all the choreography, because that's really what's powerful. But for me, you know, you've been to my class recently, and you've been to my class in the city. I think that, yes, it's a different market, it's a different energy, but it's so amazing to do it in a place for me that I'm really now setting down roots. I was supposed to come here from the beginning. I almost didn't date my now husband because I was like, I am living in Miami. I am going to be there. I knew that somewhere down the line, Soulcycle was going to open. I was banking on that. I didn't know that I was going to become a therapist too. I always knew I wanted to be a mom, but I am so excited to be doing what I love in the place that I know I'm going to be. So find me there until my legs won't let me do it anymore. You know,
we'll be there.
And you show up, I don't need to tell you this because you know, but you show up the same, whether it be in New York, Montauk, Miami, like, you show up the same. I know it's a lot easier when the consumer, like, matches your energy, but, like, no matter what, you're going to be you. And it is, for me, obviously, it's more fun in New York because the whole fucking room is packed and it's going crazy and everyone is just, like, there for the same reason. I think in Miami, sometimes, like, at the hotel, people are just like, oh, I'm just going to work out. I'm here on vacation, whatever. So it's different, but you are the same no matter what. So that's all that matters.
And it really is fun because now I've been here through the summer and I have no idea what it looks like, you know, during the season. But for me, it's already been so great. And I said to everybody in class this morning, I said, to the people who've been coming through summer, first of all, I haven't spent a summer in Miami maybe since I was 9 years old. And it is brutal. It's brutal here. But I said to them, if we've made it this great already, if I'm so fulfilled by Soulcycle here in the off season, I'm so excited to see what this season brings.
Maybe it's your why or your passion, but how do you always bring it in the same energy even when it's two people, and what if you had a bad day that day and there's two people and you still need to bring it? Like, how do you mentally do that?
And then you have to be a therapist after.
I'm using it. Therapy is a different story. But with Soulcycle, it is also selfishly my space to work through whatever it is, right? And in New York City, I was teaching 16 classes a week, and I was rollerblading from class to class to class. It was a joy. No, I genuinely loved doing it. I was missing Miami, because classic, wherever you are, you know, there's always a grass is greener moment. And so I was struggling a little bit in New York City, which we can get into later. But I said, what do I miss about Miami? And I said, I miss rollerblading down the street. And so I started rollerblading from class to class.
That is so funny.
Yeah. One night I actually was in Union Square, and I had just taught a quad, which is 4 classes, which I'm not doing that anymore, 4 throughout the day. I told my husband, Jesse, that I was on my way home. I was going to Union Square to get on the L train to go to Williamsburg, where I lived. And I was starving, and I was just like, I need a vegan chicken sandwich from Plant Burger. If you know, you know. And I was going to tell him, I just called him and I said, Jess, I'm just on my way home. I was going to have first dinner and then have second dinner when I got home. If you know that, you know that too, right? So I was housing this burger sitting on the side of the street with my rollerblades on, and like 3 guys just roll up and they're like, hey, are you coming to roll with us tonight? And I look around, and there are more and more people on rollerblades coming into Union Square. And I said, holy shit, is this Wednesday night skate? And they were like, yeah, are you coming with us? And I call Jesse up and I go, Jess, I'm going to go rollerblade with my friends. And he's like, what? Who? Like, where are you going?
Like,
I was like, I don't know, but I'm going with this roller gang. And it was so much fun. And the truth is, like, when I talk about like the expectation of myself, like I never expected to end up in New York City. I never wanted to live there, but through Soulcycle training, I was there for 10 weeks and I fell in love with it. And it wasn't so much the place. It was at the time when I believed that New York City wasn't the place for me, it was because I wasn't doing what I loved. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I now have experiences that I can share with my son, or I can share on, Pink Print podcast.
Yes.
These experiences where I just said yes, and I had the best time, and I have a scar from falling on my face under one of the bridges.
Oh my God.
I had to call my talent manager the next day and be like, hey, I'm still teaching class, but I can't teach 3 on Saturday. Because I was limping from class to class. Oh my God. But that's the thing, and I know we're going off topic right now, but that was really like one of those unique experiences where maybe it was also because of Soulcycle, right? Like, that is my why. We're going back to, found my way back to how I get energized by being in front of these people in this room and like being honest with myself about what I need and what I want. And it ends up in things like saying, oh, I need to rollerblade from class to class because that's going to give me joy. Like, in the moments where I have 2 people, I'm really getting honest with myself about what is it that's lacking in my life, or what is it that's making me uncomfortable in this moment. I think a lot of us walk around on autopilot, and every time I'm in that room at Soulcycle, it's my opportunity to really, like, as Garrett, who really was my like big instructor that I started with, he used to say, be honest with yourself. And so every day, even if I'm a little bit on autopilot in class and I'm not doing as much as I can with what I have, right? Like, going from teaching 16 classes, now I'm teaching maybe 5 classes a week, maybe 6. I really am getting to like dig deep and say, how do I use this to have these like aha epiphany moments? So for me, like, it is really me being honest on the ground, right? So if there are 2 people, great. Like, I'm working for me and I'm working with them to figure out like, what is it that I need in my life right now, and what is not serving me, and what can be different, and what can I do right now to snap myself into this place of like more honesty, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Like, I guess the short answer is like, I'm really doing it for myself too.
Yeah. That's an amazing answer.
Yeah.
I kind of want to switch gears now into your role as therapist.
Yeah.
Because number 1, how and what inspired you to become a talk therapist? And number 2, how do your personal values influence the way that you interact with your clients?
So I think I'll start with the second question first, because it really inspired me going into this field. I was 4 years into teaching at Soulcycle. I started at 21, so I was 25. And I said to myself, I love this, but I want to be able to have an even greater reach. And I also wanted to be able to reach different types of people, right? So not necessarily just the type of person that can afford to go to Soulcycle, because, you know, that is one small type of person.
Yeah.
Or one small type of, you know, what's it called? Like a
community.
Yeah, exactly. And so I really was thinking about my experience in adolescence and growing up and saying to myself, you know, all of this stuff that I've been saying about expectation, like all of these things are a mirror, right, for me and where I was in my life. And I was feeling just like I wanted more. And I decided that I wanted to be able to face-to-face, or now through telehealth, be able to help people get even more honest with themselves, right? Because that was fulfilling to me. When you came to me, Kat, after a class and you said, really, that changed my day, or that shifted my perspective, or that gave me this energy that I needed, or this made me think, that was the real validation and fulfillment, right? And that speaks to like the 2 people in the room versus 60. So for me, I said, what do I need to do? It ended up being a 2-year program, going back to school to learn all about why we as people are the way that we are, right? So emotionally, environmentally, mentally, physically, spiritually. Did I miss anything? It's like all of that wrapped into one of, you know, becoming who we are, right? So all of these different elements. And this is what I was exploring in myself at this time. I was really coming to terms with like, why do I feel the way that I feel? I had experienced, you know, periods of anxiety, depression, you know, not understanding why I felt so heavy when things were like so okay, let's say, right? And I think so many of us understand now these real things that go on in our bodies, in our minds, like in our space of energy where we don't have to just sit there and like grit and bear it and feel just uncomfortable with feeling uncomfortable, right? I wanted to learn how to accept and appreciate where I was and also find things to do to help me move forward. So I work with my clients in this like dialectical way where it's 2 things true at the same time, right? So really what I'm passionate about is cognitive therapy and dialectical therapy, so CBT and DBT. Cognitive behavioral therapy is really about recognizing our thoughts, our cognitions. So each of us as humans, we have these cognitive patterns that, for better or for worse, these are ways that we've learned how to cope. So sometimes it can be black and white thinking, or all or nothing thinking, or catastrophizing, like the sky is falling down.
It's
right?
giving us earlier today.
We went into panic mode earlier.
We were spiraling.
And we were like, we need to calm the hell down. Like, why are we just like, you spiral into negative thoughts so quickly.
Yeah. And that can bring up, you know, black and white thinking or all or nothing thinking. And so this is why I decided I was experiencing this on the ground at Soulcycle with real people that I loved and I was working with. And I was saying, why are we all feeling these same things? And why can't I now dip my toe into this space where I can understand even more how to show up for the people around me and show up for myself, right? So I went to school for 2 years to learn about, you know, people in their environment, all of these different, you know, clinical, let's say, understandings of the basics of why we feel the way that we feel, right?
What are your biggest takeaways from that?
There are 2 ways for me that changed my life of looking at my own thoughts. And this is my idea that, you know, if we can think in these ways and understand the way that we feel and think, we can just feel a little bit better and we can be better humans, right? For ourselves and for the people in our lives. So there's cognitive therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and dialectical behavioral therapy. What someone told me once, the C, you can think of it as change. So if I have a thought, like a black and white thought, or you guys give me one from earlier today that you were thinking when you were spiraling.
Yeah. At a property like the fire department show, people are like, oh my God, did someone die? Is the property on fire? Is something wrong with the building? Blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, then we have to pay for this, and you can't pay for that. And like just all these things. I'm like, oh, should I not tell like Alex to come because I have to go do this now? And it's like nothing was even fucking wrong.
Okay,
like,
so perfect example. That's like maybe a catastrophizing moment where like the sky is falling because they came by, right?
But just called and they were like, hey, can you call us back?
Okay.
That's it.
So for me, with my background now and these skills that I've developed for myself, you know, personally and also professionally, that would be like a pause. And now let's like for me, it's so funny. I actually thought of this, maybe I heard it from somewhere else, but I feel like I'm very visual, and this is how I thought of it. Like when you're spiraling like that, it's like a pause, backspace, right? Like I'm deleting, and then rewriting. Okay, so that would be like a change. So we pause, and it's like okay, the fire department just called. You were thinking that you need to like cancel everything, right? Pause, backspace. I don't need to cancel everything. Let me take a minute and breathe, and then we'll figure out everything later. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah. It's like rewriting the thought. Does that make sense? Yeah. Did that make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I took like a whole thought, and now we're just backspacing it. We're pausing, we're backspacing, deleting it, and then we're rewriting it. That's the change, right? And then maybe like the DVT side of like the accepting the thought is the pause, and it's, okay, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now, and I'm going to give myself the time to just breathe for a few minutes, and everything's going to be okay. Like, I'm going to figure it out.
I don't know if you ever heard of Kabbalah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So it's so funny because like Kabbalah 101, they say when anything happens, and I obviously forgot this today, but they're like, pause. They literally say pause, which is what you're saying.
Yes.
And they're like, then you tell yourself like, what an opportunity sort of to like transform the energy. Totally. To be like, okay, pause, relax. Not everything's catching on fire. This is my moment to now, whatever, be nice because someone pissed me off, or to like calm down and approach us in a proactive way rather than reactively and think the world is falling apart, Yeah. So it's so interesting because that's like more of a spiritual wisdom thing, but how it's so linked really with science.
It's very intertwined. I took a class that was spirituality of social work, and it was all about, how spirituality, and it's funny because my sister was talking a lot about spirituality on her episode.
She was.
Which we're sisters. We're talking, we're very different horoscopes, but very different signs. But, for me, spirituality and like that sense of peace can be music. That's what we talked about in that class.
Yeah.
Like my teacher was this very religious lady who she was very funny, and she was just like, for me, she had 10 kids, and she was just like, for me, spirituality is like sitting and having my coffee in the morning and watching the birds, you know? And she asked us, what is spirituality to you? And to me, it was a lot of the things that I get to do at Soulcycle. It's music, it's movement, it's being able to curate this feeling for myself of what I need, right? So going back to kind of curating this feeling that I need in therapy, for me, a perfect example of like the changing the thought versus accepting the thought was a lot of feeling like down on myself for feeling down. So I would kind of kick myself for feeling off. I'd be like, this blame of, you're so lucky.
Yeah.
Why do you
feel... why are you upset? Why are you feeling down?
Yeah, you have no reason to feel this way. Pause. Backspace. I'm feeling a little off, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to feel this way forever. Or just pause. Backspace. It's okay to not feel 100% okay right now. Mm-hmm. It's so... when we're in it, it's so hard to unravel the thoughts. For me, it was really an understanding of like 101 on the ground, how to recognize, okay, maybe I'm doing this black and white thinking right now. Maybe I am feeling like the sky is falling a little bit, and maybe I just need to pause and think about the way that my brain is working right now. Mm-hmm. And detaching my brain and its coping mechanisms, faulty as they are, I was able to kind of detach myself from this level of blame and expectation that I was putting on myself, right? So not expecting anything of this brain that can be complicated, but also does a lot of incredible things for me, right? Same way like we look at our bodies and the way that we move. If we're working out for anything but, doing something kind for ourselves, like sometimes it's not as great as when you're working out from a place of like, I'm trying to give to myself.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other conversation too, but these are my whys.
Speaking of, I wanted to say this anyway. Like when I am having a bad day or like negative thoughts, and I obviously like uncovered this in therapy also, but it's so easy. It's like, okay, like what can I control right now? And I'm like, oh, my body looks terrible today. Like I'm fat, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, like, why are you saying that? Like, your body didn't change from one day to the next. Like, maybe I'm just having a bad day today. And like, the easiest thing for me to say is like, oh, I don't look pretty today. Like, and then you just like start picking yourself apart. And then you're just like in that negative mind space. Like, it's like a hamster wheel, like over and over again. Then you just can't stop thinking like negative thoughts. So for me, it's like, okay, like, what can I control? Like, you're fine. Like, you don't look any different than you did a week ago. So that's already like, that's a fact. And you can throw that statement away. And it's like, okay, like, what is actually bothering me today? Oh, like XYZ. Like, it's not my body that's bothering me today. But I think it's the easiest thing for me to be like, this is what I can control. And then that's it. Like, especially when I was younger. Now, not as much, because I also like recognize that that's how I function.
Right.
But yeah.
I think that's on point, because I think a lot of us, in the way that we think and the way that we feel, I think a lot of the time there's this level of expectation of controlling thought versus accepting it. And it doesn't need to be this radical acceptance, which is another type of therapy. It's called the radical acceptance approach, and where it's where you like really are just like, I accept this, I accept it all. For me, that's not normally my go-to, but there is a level of this acceptance of the thought, or acceptance of how I'm feeling, and release of the blame, so that I can actually get on with coping with it, right? Instead of just this cycle of blaming. And so it goes from control to acceptance, right? Or from fear to just trust that as long as I'm on this journey of like honesty, I guess, right? Which is the intersection of all of it for me, like the Soulcycle therapy. It's like getting really honest, like, what do we as humans need to just feel better? And that was my original Soulcycle tagline. It was, don't let the things you can't control keep you from becoming the person that you're meant to be.
I love that.
Now it's we can, we are, which is a little bit shorter. Maybe I'll change it back. I don't know.
Speaking of like, all of our tikkuns is what we say. Yeah. Which, like, can you explain what a tikkun is?
Well, basically means all the things we came here to, like, it literally means to repair, but like all the things we came here to learn in this life, basically, right? Everyone has different things that they need to work on, right? Some people are better at relationships, some people need to work on finance, whatever. Big picture, right? So
I wanted to get into pretty much, obviously all of us are a work in progress forever, but in my head, I was talking about it like with my boyfriend the other day. I was in a negative spiral again, obviously. And I'm like, how am I ever like going to be like ready to get like married and have a baby and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, how did you know when you were ready to like take that next step with your partner? Because we were talking about this before, because we do love Alex Cooper, but she posted something today, and it's funny that you brought it up, because I thought the same thing. And she basically wrote like, if you have even a sliver of doubt about your partner ever in your life, like they are not the one. And it's like, I'm like, what? Just kidding, baby. No, but it's like, of course he will agree. When you get into a stupid argument with your partner, you're like, fuck this. Why am I even getting married? Blah, blah, blah. You're like, I don't want to be in this relationship. I don't even care anymore. And it's so easy to just be like, oh my God. So how did you know that it was like time to take the next step? And then, of course, time to have Jack. Because it's like, I don't want to put any of this stupid, like, negative spiraling thoughts that I have onto my baby. Like, I'm clearly not ready to have a baby. I'm still working on myself, but it's also like, we're going to be working on ourselves forever. So Definitely. We can't be perfect to have our baby.
Definitely.
Right.
Well, Jesse and I met in college, and it's so funny because he was very much like knocking on my door, and I was kind of like doing my Soulcycle thing. I wasn't necessarily...
You weren't interested.
I knew, you know what's funny? I knew deep down inside that this was not someone that I wanted to jump into something with and potentially, you know, like have a fling. He was not that person for me. We were always drawn to each other. I always say, like, as humans first, and we were friends for a few years. And then the second that I really like gave him a shot, I never looked back. I will say though, I've been really honest, maybe to a fault, with, you know, my sister and people in my life that I'm very close to. Jesse and I are very honest about our flaws, I'd say, as a couple, and we never pretend to be anything close to perfect or like having figured it out, right? But what I said to the two of you before we started this podcast is, I know that at the end of the day, this person would walk to the ends of the earth to make things right. And I feel the same about him. You know, I would much rather have that sense of, security in us as a couple, then on paper, like have all of these things like check, right? And so I will say, funny story, it was my cousin's wedding, and Jesse and I had been dating for not too long. And the entire day I was so anxious. I was just like, I couldn't put my finger on it, right? Like this idea of like, I was so irritable, I was so uncomfortable, and I couldn't figure it out. And it wasn't until the cocktail hour that, I was with Emily in the bathroom, and I was like, I'm just feeling so off because I don't want to get married right now. And I thought that because I didn't want to get married to Jesse in this moment, that maybe he wasn't the right person for me. And have in mind, this is like one of the first experiences where I'm like really like at a wedding with the person who could potentially like be my long-term partner, my person, right? And the reality, I was 23 maybe,
Mm-hmm.
22
right
or 23.
Like our age when we were already dating our boyfriends.
Yeah, and I was very much like, I should feel at this point like I'm at a wedding. I should feel like we are getting married and like I want to get married right now. I want to marry him right now. And the truth is, my sister, who was 5 years younger, looks at me and she's like, Alex, no one is saying that you're getting married. Like Jesse's not asking you to get married right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, it's the same thing with motherhood. It's like you really don't understand the stage that you're at. You really don't know until your feet are on the ground and you're in it, right? Like I wasn't ready to be a mom when I became pregnant, right? Like, and there's a point in that.
You're not having a baby right now.
No, so you're not getting married right now.
My question was more like, if we're always a work in progress, like how do you know when that time is right? 'Cause
you never know, in my opinion. Like maybe that's a controversial opinion, but I know that Jesse and I, through our engagement period, like we were constantly working at things. We were having these deep conversations that we had started before engagement, right? Mm-hmm. So I really believe that once you're in a committed relationship, it's really important to talk about the big things. It's important to talk about how you want to raise your family. It's important to talk about finances. It's important to talk about how you want to fight. Because everybody gets into things. I don't care who says it. If you're saying that you never, have an issue with the way that your partner does something, or you never have a miscommunication, then like, let's get honest. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But you always say, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but
it's fine.
I want to bring it back to the point. Like you always tell me like, I'm so happy I waited to have Jack.
Yeah.
Like why?
Yeah. Because Jesse and I were figuring ourselves out. Mm-hmm. We ended up having an extra year of engagement because we were supposed to get married November 21st, 2020. We got married November 20th, 2021. That's so
funny. The coincidences were like not a coincidence. It was perfect.
Yeah. And I remember us going on a little trip. We drove from the city to Vermont to celebrate our would-be wedding. And when I think back to that weekend, a year before we were getting married, and we actually did like our pre-first dance at like the exact time that we had known that we were going to schedule for our first dance to be. And I remember, now even like at 8 p.m. or whatever it is, I think about the difference between that first dance and the pre-first dance a year before. Like we were growing rapidly through our engagement period. And so I remember going up to Jesse at the bar during that cocktail hour after Emily and I came out of the bathroom, and I was like, Jesse, so excited to tell him. I was like, Jesse, guess what? I'm not ready to get married. Like I don't want to marry you right now. Okay. And he's like, I don't want to marry you either right now. And to answer your question, and this is one of the many reasons that I fucking love my husband, and like I don't tell him enough, and like it's normal life. Like we don't always say it, right? But he always has these moments where he just like gets it. Yeah. He gets me. And that's where my sister said to me the other day, like, you two are perfect for each other. And, he looks at me and he's like, that's the beauty of it. One day we're going to wake up and we're just going to know it's time.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is it. Like simply, and this is the difference between us. I go through this entire story of telling you, how I knew and I didn't know. For Jesse, it was so simple of one day we're going to wake up and we're going to know. And that's why, like, he is one of the reasons that he's the person for me, right? Like, we get there differently and he balances me out in that sense. But because he was the right person and we would fight better as we got older and we would have these deep conversations and we figured our stuff out on the go, like, we got there, right? And even I did say, when I was walking down the aisle, I was going to know, and everybody there who was close to me, who knew the things that we'd gone through together as a couple, you know, leading up to our wedding, everyone was going to know that this was a decision that we fully fleshed out, right? Like, I think a lot of people are afraid of defaulting to something because then you go your entire life and it's either divorce or, you know, there's discomfort or there's, you know, just like disarray, marital disarray, like whatever you want to call it. It's just like a lack of happiness. And Jesse and I both said we want to be married one time forever. And so let's get really uncomfortable and really honest and have all of these really intense conversations so that we can decide and really figure out, like, are we right for each other?
I think that, like, it's like you said earlier, people are complex, and also about the fuck yes, fuck no that Alex Cooper said. It's just like you said, not everything else also like black and white. And I think that things happen, and sometimes like you are upset with the person or they're upset with you and you're working on it together. But I think like at the end of the day, what is a fuck yes? Like, you're just always happy all the time. Like, it's always like just amazing. Like, what do you mean without a doubt? Like, I have doubts like with my family, with my mother, with my sister. You know what I mean? Totally. Like, friends, sometimes it's just sort of like things happen, you know, and like we're emotional and everyone's different, but like I'm emotional. So it's not doubts, but you just have thoughts and you think things, and it doesn't necessarily mean like this person is like bad. It's just like, oh, you know, this happened and we need to figure it out. But I think what's so important, like you said too, it's like the fact that like it doesn't matter. You want to make it work. And like you're both in it for the long run. And at the end of the day, you're both like going to come together and like make it work. Yeah. Not forcing yourself to be together. That's different. But like a thing that's like, we want to be together so badly that we're always going to do what we can to like do it.
Exactly. And that's what I want to
make it happen.
Yeah. And that's when you have a child too. Like, it's not just about your relationship. So that's the thing. It's your babies depending on you too. And, you know, a few things. One thing in particular, I want anyone listening to this who's, you know, going through this of, if it's not a fuck yes, like, and in this moment, like, should I run the other way or cut and run? I say go into walk towards the flames and like ask the hard questions, right?
Also, because like, what does that mean? That fuck no? Like, maybe that's something that you actually need to work on, because then you're gonna end up going to another relationship and be like, fuck no too, and then this doesn't work out because they have the same patterns and you're not actually like fixing internally what you need to fix, and that's why you keep attracting the same kind of person.
Exactly.
So it's like, maybe try to work it out with this person, and then still truly, if it doesn't work, okay, it's fine, you know. But I think sometimes we need to try it out, because sometimes it's not just so easy. Like, I had doubt, like, let me just run the other way.
Yeah.
And then also that sort of feels like if you do end up getting married, then you're like, something went wrong, divorce is also not just the option just like that, you know. Like, don't you want to make it work? Don't you want to put some more effort into it instead of just like, I'm in or out?
And truthfully, and some people, like most people actually, and I don't want to throw any shade on divorce, because sometimes it is the right thing, right?
No, 100%. Yeah.
For me, I was like, I get to ask these questions right now. I get to go through this period of not being like, fuck yes. And I know Jesse, if he listens to this episode, like, he'll sit there and nod and he'll look at me and he'll be like, you did a good job, honey. You know, like, he's not going to be like, don't say that. Like, don't say you were ever like, not fuck yes. Like, he would say, no, that's real. You know, like, there were points for both of us.
This is real. I think that, like, I come from a background where, like, my mother has experienced 2 divorces. So I'm like, I don't ever want to get divorced. Of course, like, it happens. And, you know, if God forbid something was really not working out, like, it's not like we're not going to do it. We're going to be happy.
It's better to be happy. It's going to be better. Right?
But it's like, I think also when you're saying a fuck yes, you could also just be like so emotionally and passionately like in it right now, which people are like that. Like, my mom at the time probably had no shadow of a doubt that this was your person. And then you realize and you're like, this was so not my person and I cannot be in this, you know? So maybe also your emotions like end up not letting you see rationally, because this is also someone you're going to spend the rest of your life with, and it's a lot comes with that.
I think there's a distinction too between when we're talking about like a fuck yes, if it's your wedding day and you're not like fuck yes.
Okay, that's
right. That's then, maybe not a good thing.
Listen to that.
But I think there's something to say about taking the time to experience the process.
Yes.
Right? Like, I think that a lot of people like me grew up like watching the movies and seeing like relationships how I expected. There's the word again, buzzword, expectation, like thought things were supposed to be and feel like. That when I got to this very real experience of being at my cousin's wedding and being like, whoa, this is what a wedding looks like and feels like. And can I picture myself here at this moment? It was not my time. We didn't get married for another 5-6 years. You know, like I was not supposed to feel. And maybe that whole day, I know for a fact, I would have enjoyed my day so much more because I wouldn't have put pressure on myself for needing to feel like I was supposed to be in this different place. And anyone listening to this who's dating right now and is putting pressure on themselves, like, oh, if it's not a fuck yes right now, if I want to be with this person, like, you're not supposed to know, you know? Like, you're supposed to go through the trials of experiencing these things on the ground. And it's the same thing for motherhood. And it's the same thing for birth and pregnancy, which
I want to talk about now.
Me too.
Like, how did you find out you were pregnant, first of all? Like, I've never even asked you that.
Yeah. So I'm very open.
Were you trying to have a baby?
Yes. Okay, I was telling everyone, like, I was for a long time though, it's funny because I've told friends before, I think that I always wanted a baby. When I was in 7th grade, I was that girl who was like, I wonder what my baby's going to put on their hot dog. Like, are they going to like ketchup or mustard, or, you know, are they going to like peanut butter and jelly? Oh my gosh, I hope they're not allergic to peanut butter. My friends were sitting there like, what the fuck is she talking about? Like, we're in 7th grade, you know? And I always felt, I am very spiritual, and I always felt like my child was like somewhere there, right? And I've read some books now going through the process of like actively trying to have a baby. I like read a lot about like spirit babies, and here's where we get crunchy, like disclaimer. But I really always felt like this presence that like my baby was like with
around
me.
you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I could cry right now because he was.
We're so crunchy, first of all, and I love your baby so I don't even want to say that word so much, Jack Elliott. But
I need to meet him.
We always say like, you choose your parents. Like, do you know that that idea that like you come into this world and you choose your parents?
Yes,
like,
I do.
And Jack chose you and Jesse. So it's like, was he there before?
He's been waiting to come down to you guys at the right moment.
Believe that. I believe that. I really, really do. And so, you know, I spent a long time, like I would, at my loneliest times, like when I was, again, like trying to figure my life out. And that's the beauty of it. Like my sister has said this, like you can't make a mistake because like what's for you is already for you. And I actually recently said this to someone that I love who was going through a really difficult breakup. You know, they were like, how do I get through this? And I was like, your baby, you know, like your baby is yours already. And your baby needs you for you, not for your baby, but needs you to be with the person that's going to make you happy. And I say that even for people who already have kids or,
that's so nice.
Or people who are in a relationship and they're struggling, and maybe ending the relationship is the right thing, right? Like, doesn't matter what the situation is. Like for me, that sense was always like, this is greater than you. Like it's for you, but it's also greater than that. So, you know, I said to that person, like, your baby is yours. And that is going to be like a highlight of your life. Like for me, it is the highlight of my life. Like my family, right? And this little family that I've created with Jesse. Give him a little bit of credit there, which he always likes to remind me. He's like, you know, you wouldn't have Jack without me. And I'm like, it's true. It's very true, right? So that said, what was your question?
How did you find out you were pregnant?
Oh, yeah, there we go. So I decided, this is what I was going to say. There was a period of time where I actually said, I'm not ready to have a baby, right? I was in New York City rollerblading around, teaching 1.5 million classes. And I really had this like year of yes, of being like, I'm saying yes to everything like that I want to do. I'm going to go and enjoy. And I knew that on the other side of this eventually was going to be a new period of my life where it wasn't going to look like that, which it doesn't look like that. And so it kind of hit me all at once. Cause I remember being like saying to my mom, wow, like right now, like I'm not ready for a baby. Like I can't imagine it. And I had wanted this my entire life. And I remember what Jesse said, right? About one day you're going to wake up and it's going to make sense. And this was the same thing. Like one day I just woke up and I was like, something needs to change. And I remember my grandma, who's 96, I'm visiting her this weekend. I remember her saying, you're going to have time for all these things. Like, you're on a roll, just keep rolling. And that was in December when I felt like I needed a change. And then February came around and I was like, that's it. Like, I'm ready. Like, and I went through the process of like figuring out, do I need to move? Like, do I need to quit my job? Do we need to go to Miami? Like, what is it? And then I was like, no, I don't need all of these things to fall into place. I am ready for this part of our lives, right? And so I like completely cut out alcohol. Like, I cut out everything. I was like super serious, like, my one thing that I want right now
to get pregnant.
And like, not in a restrictive way, but in a way that gave me so much purpose and I had so much passion about it. I researched like the best foods for like your hormones.
Like, you were in it, just like you are in everything else.
I was so in it, and I was just like, not in a way that I didn't want to put pressure on myself, because that's a hard part about you know, sharing that you're interested in starting this chapter of your life with other people, because they're like, just relax. Like, my heart goes out to anybody who is, you know, currently trying to have a baby. And when someone says like, you know, just relax or just let it happen, like, that is one of the hardest things to hear. For me, it was a method of allowing myself this like love, like what we were saying about working out or, you know, doing anything else, like with a strengths-based perspective, right? So that's what I would say in therapy. Like, a strengths-based perspective for me was like, let me fuel myself. Let me like nourish myself. Let me take care of myself. Let me just like really live in this place of like the most love I can give myself, so that I can create an environment for my child that is coming to me. You know, I don't know when.
Huge lesson is just give whatever you're doing your all, which is what seems like you're doing in every single category of your life.
Trying. But sometimes I need a break, right?
Yes.
So this is nice that I get
So
to
what
come.
are the biggest takeaways so far that you've seen as being a mother?
Yes.
And like raising a baby, a human,
like
that's going to join society one day.
From the get-go, I felt this like greater sense of purpose that like I get to help nourish another human and like raise a human to love themselves and love their world in ways that like maybe I have always wanted and I've always tried. You know, like we talk about repeat versus repair. We were talking about this before, like taking the good things that we love about our upbringing, or taking the good things that we love about, you know, ourselves or the people in our lives, and like really passing that on, right? And I know I never answered how I found out that I was pregnant, but I knew that we were trying, and I was hoping that I was, but I really didn't think that I was. Right? Like, I really didn't think that I was pregnant. And Jesse and I were in agreement that I wasn't going to take the test until like the next day. Right? And he left to walk the dogs. And of course, I had one test that I ordered on GoPuff. Okay.
Not GoPuff.
My New York City. Yeah. And I don't even know what brand it was. And he went downstairs to take the dogs out, and I went and took the test. You did it quickly. And it was like a hard line. And I remember I was listening to this song. It was on the playlist that you made. I can't remember.
Taylor Swift, This Is Me Trying.
No. Oh. It was
not the Taylor Swift.
I can't remember it right now, but Evergreen by Mitchie Mitch and the Coal Miners. And I remember playing the song, and I had like 10 seconds left, and I started the song over, and I flipped it, and I remember it was like this sense of peace like just washed all over me. It was like similar to my wedding, where everything was like, at my wedding, everything kind of went awry. Like, it was monsooning, we lost power. Like, it was nothing that I predicted, everything that I like had kind of hoped like wouldn't happen, but it was the best fucking day of my life, other than the birth of my child.
So that you just felt so spiritually there.
I felt so spiritually there, and really truly, like, for majority of my pregnancy, I really was like tapped the fuck in.
I think that's so important, because everything translates to your baby too.
I was going to ask about that.
Feeling the energy, what you're taking, what you're listening, and that also makes a difference with their energy.
All of the work that I did up until that point, all of the hard moments, all of the conversations with my husband that were, you know, like us figuring out who we were individually and as a couple, like all of these, you know, like heartbreak moments of my life, all of the adversity that I had ever faced, it was like I had trained for this. This was what I trained my life for. And I know not everybody feels that way, and that's okay, you know? For me personally, I always wanted this, and I felt like this was the moment. And my entire pregnancy, it was just like this, obviously there were moments and normal things, but I really trained myself to meet the moment, every moment that I could, the best that I could, right? Whether it was emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, there were hard moments, you know? And same thing with birth, which, you know, I want to talk about birth.
Yeah, I want to talk about it. And I want to talk about, I mean, I know what ended up happening, but I want to talk about it. Like, the whole time you were like, I'm not going to do an epidural. And your mom was like, oh yeah, you'll see, blah, blah. And you were like, please, like, stop. Like, I don't want to do one. And I want to hear like your reasoning. And also like, we can talk about like what happened and everything.
Yeah. I think it's funny because a lot of it kind of goes into this idea of control, right? So for me, like, not wanting any medical intervention, I had done so much research. No matter what you do, no matter where you look, no matter what you read, there's always going to be a school of thought that's like, you know, kind of, there's fear inherent in everything, right? Yeah. And at the end of the day, birth, you can't control any of it. And welcome to motherhood, right?
It's like no one's ever had a perfect birth, ever.
No, I mean, I think, and look, I will say, I don't want to sound horrible, but like my birth was fucking spectacular. Yeah. But what I didn't prepare for was the aftermath.
Exactly.
Right? So no matter what, there's always something, because that's life, right? And I will say this, like, birth can be absolutely incredible. Like, my birth was, my 3 words that I wanted peaceful, joyful, spiritual. Like, it was that and
take
more.
Those to my birth.
It was amazing. Like, it was amazing. And I think why is because, again, like, I walked into the flames of like training myself and reading and getting educated, getting empowered about what that was going to look like. And so this is to answer your question. Really what I wanted more than anything, more than like frolicking in a field and then like coming in and not having an epidural and all of these things, like I wanted to let go of control, even though I was like inherently trying to control everything by saying like, I want no intervention.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I didn't want anyone. I wanted to just be with my body, myself, my baby. And that was really like one of the motivating factors for me. Like, I wanted in some ways to like control it. Right. And I got a really great lesson from God, or, you know, for me it's God, but like from your higher power, whatever you want to call it, from the universe. I got this lesson of like, same thing at my wedding, it's going to go how it's going to go. And I ended up needing to be induced. I had this condition at 38 weeks or 37 weeks called cholestasis, where my liver wasn't functioning properly. Found out like at my appointment. I was in the hospital 2 days later getting an induction, which means like you are like getting all the medicine, like he was also turned in a way that he wasn't upside down, which is breech. He was posterior. So we were spine to spine, which put a lot of pressure on my spine. And it was just really, really intense. And the truth is, I did hypnobirthing, which is like a way of meditation. I'm giving not a great explanation of it, but
the waves.
It's this whole, there's language involved. There's visualizations. I meditated. I've never been someone who meditates. I meditated for months. I did this whole course with Jesse for 10 hours. I'm so glad I did it. I had a totally medically managed birth. I'm so glad, because I was so empowered, and it was the most beautiful experience that I could have had, partially because like I had the epidural, like I wasn't in any type of discomfort. And that was really hard for me to come to terms at the hospital that, you know, I wasn't going to have this birth that I had practiced for and envisioned. It was like my wedding, where everything went differently, but it was better than I had planned or imagined. I ended up getting to literally pull my baby from my body. The doctor, shout out to Dr. Bitron, he was like,
oh my God,
I love him so much.
My mom gave birth to my siblings with him.
I love him so much.
He's
amazing.
So crazy.
Their whole practice is great, but I remember him being like, give me your hand. And I was like, okay. And he goes, give me your other hand. And I'm feeling my baby. And he goes, now pull.
No, she says he's amazing. And she's like, that's who I gave birth with. I don't know why she didn't do it with me, but with my 2 siblings, she did it with him. That's amazing. So funny.
And it was, look, that might not have been I don't know what my experience would have been, right? And in part, I think that I was meant to have this birth because I was so gung-ho on like empowerment of however you want to birth, and just like stepping into it as like, you know, even as women, like we go to the doctor and we're not really sure sometimes, like asking questions, or when things are feeling like they're being done to you. My biggest thing was I wanted to walk out with as little or to no birth trauma as possible, because I knew that motherhood was going to be, its own experience that I needed to give all of my energy to. So I wanted to walk away with a sense of empowerment, no matter how my birth went, no matter if it ended in, an unmedicated birth, a C-section, anything in between. I wanted to feel like as empowered as possible, right? And I did. I felt incredible. That said, my son did go to the NICU, and for people listening, the NICU is not necessarily a place like it's the neonatal ICU. It's not necessarily like as scary as it sounds. Like some babies go there because they need a little more monitoring. Fortunately, Jack came out, with a low heart rate, which means that, from all the Soulcycle in my belly the week before he was born, like he was just super chill, but they needed to take extra precautions. The way that it went down was a little bit scary. And I think that I would have emerged from that experience a little bit more grounded and a little less, just kind of like jostled, I guess, if I would have known that like the NICU is not as scary of a place as it might sound, and that babies go in there for monitoring, and also just knowing that like as a mom, you are entitled to say yes and say no and take the pause at any point, right? So that said, my birth was spectacular. Like if I didn't have an epidural, I don't know if we probably wouldn't have been sitting there with me playlisting like the songs that I wanted Jack to come out to, right? Like we were having spiritual conversations, me, my doula, my mom, and my husband. Like it was literal birth party. We had the best time. Like I was chilling in like my lip gloss with my eye mask. Like I just was sitting there reflecting on becoming a mom, and it would have been a totally different experience if I was unmedicated, and it maybe would have been a more like visceral, raw, like experience where I was really like deep inside my body. I was still deep inside my body, like I was still so connected to my baby. It was just completely different than I had prepared for. And truthfully, at the end of the day, like if there's any takeaway, I think for, people listening to this and watching themselves go through this experience of pregnancy and birthing a human, like if you can find empowerment, it is like the most freaking awesome experience ever. Like I loved birth. I loved it so much. Was there like a specific question you had for me about it? Like no. I loved it. I could talk about birth for hours.
No, I think that covers like a lot of the mindset, like going into and how people can prepare for that.
Yeah. Like I just got educated. I did hypnobirthing. It was really about like relaxing your body and like not fighting anything, and emotionally, like that's really what helped me too,
Do you think for your hopeful next birth that you're going to prepare, like will you do anything different, or are you just going to like you chill about it again? I
mean, I would be so blessed and so happy if it was anything that it was like for this time, At the end of the day, I really have experienced it. Like at the end of it, you just want your baby to be safe and healthy and here. And that is like the most incredible gift ever. Right. But I love birth. Like I'm fascinated by it. I'm so passionate about it. And I know a lot of people are scared of birth. And I think that
sounds really scary, honestly.
Yeah. And
I don't know if I feel scared. I just feel like since I don't know, since I'm not there. You just like, what are you scared? Like, I don't even know what there is to be scared of.
Like shitting myself.
When you know,
which I like probably will.
Well, guess what? Like, if you did or if you do, like, it's no biggie because they don't mind. But also, like, if you're really that's what you're really fearful about, like, there are things that you can do to like I literally breathed myself through a nice moment before giving birth to the baby, before I was not allowed to go anymore. Wow, I didn't really think I was going to be talking about this on the podcast, but like, I got it out of the way before baby came,
I just think
really sharing here.
Same. I just think it's like scary. Like, I don't know, it's birth, but it's also like the after. It's like there's literally a baby coming out of your vagina if you choose natural birth. And like, how does your vagina like open like that? And then like you're like bleeding.
People wear like diapers after.
It's amazing. Yeah. And honestly,
but I feel like people are so focused on I don't know. You're so focused on your baby that's here now. Like, are you really? I will say this, because people really don't understand what a doula does.
my doula was standing. She was amazing. Her name's Courtney. From Amazing Births and Beyond. And like I did all these classes with her. And part of the reason I really recommend hypnobirthing is because it teaches you this mind-body experience, right? So while I didn't have an unmedicated birth, I had my doula and I had this technique of like really just like surrendering my body and relaxing as much as possible. That so helped me through every single stage. And it really was like, you know, we take it seriously with other things, meditation and movement and all of these like mind body connection things. Like, why can't we apply it to birth where exactly as we should? Because that's what birth is based on, right? But my doula was standing in my ear as the doctor's telling me like, do this, do that, like push, bear down, all of these things, pull your leg, like push here. And my doula was standing there saying, relax your face, relax your jaw, baby's coming, you know? And I had a really easy recovery because of it. That's all I'm going to say. Maybe
I need a doula just for like regular life.
Yeah, honestly.
As you're saying that, I'm like, relax.
Yeah. No, but it was amazing. And truthfully, like pregnancy and birth taught me so much about how I want to live my life. Like I can be gritting and focused on fear or like frustration or tightness, or I can understand and learn the way that my brain and my body work, and I can just let go. And I can, and I'm practicing now, like after birth, having a baby, it really is a life change. And again, it's one of those things where I hope people listening, like walk away from this podcast feeling empowered and feeling comforted and feeling validated in this idea of like, we're not meant to understand or be prepared for the things that we're not meant to yet. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah. I have like one last pregnancy question.
Yeah, please.
Because I know your answer, but I think it's still an important question to ask, because I think a lot of women think about it. And like, how did you navigate during pregnancy, just like your body changing, and then after birth, like, was it like scary? Like, oh my God, like my body looks so different. Like I wanted to like look back how it was before. I think I know your answer, and it's obviously like just like I'm so grateful to have a healthy baby and like provide for this beautiful human. But yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of women do think about that stuff.
I think it's funny because it really goes into a lot of the themes I feel like we've talked about today. But one, expectation and like kindness to yourself about like understanding why you feel the way that you feel. Like when we think about it, it's such a big change. And what you were talking about, like, and what we were talking about, the control versus acceptance, right? Like, I think that for me, it was all empowerment, right? Like, of course, there are moments where you're like, whoa, this feels really different. But if I can understand that my entire life is changing or has changed, of course, I'm, you know, or maybe all of us, we go to the things that we're used to either picking at or we're used to trying to control, right? Or the things that you can see, right? So I think a lot of the time, like, we focus on how we look or how we appear when it's really about how we're feeling. Yeah. Right? And so for me, it was all empowerment of, and I actually loved my belly postpartum. Like the first few days, I was just like, wow, like the baby was in here and now he's out in my arms. Like it really was a moment of empowerment. And I think for people who are one day hoping to be pregnant, or people who are pregnant, or people who are postpartum, I think we're opening up the doors to this conversation a lot more now than we ever have, about, maybe we're not saying it in a way that's, this is empowerment, but we're now talking about it's okay to feel these things, right? It's okay to have these thoughts. And instead of, you know, going into the cycle of, why am I having this thought? I should be grateful, or I should just feel like this is a gift or a miracle or whatever else you want to say. Like, it's okay to have a thought, to pause, to backspace, and to reframe it. You know,
I love that. To put together these two incredible parts of your life, your career and now your baby, how are you managing all of that and balancing all of that?
Every day is really different. Some days I'm like, I don't want to work at all and I just want to be with my baby. Some days I'm like, I really love my work and I love getting to do it. And I think it is day by day. One thing that really has been helping me, I know this is really funny, but like, I love my mom friends. I'm in like a couple of new group chats of moms, other moms, and some of them work, some of them don't. And I think that it's like basically what this podcast is based in as well. It's like understanding and community and connection and being able to like kind of break the wall or break the glass of like, again, expectation of how we think we're supposed to be in this time. Like my answer for everything right now is I'm very much like figuring it out on the go. And right now what's keeping me feeling really grounded is like making a plan a day, right? So even if I have like one client session or I have one class, I'm also making a plan to do one thing with Jack in that day, and really just taking in the little moments of enjoying him, because it really is going by so quickly. And I think when I'm in those moments of discomfort or I'm feeling overwhelmed by my dogs or my house or whatever it is like taking that pause and saying, what do I need in this moment? Like, what's the honesty here, right? Like, what do I need today? Do I need to step out of my house and go take my son for a walk? Or do we need to go sit on a blanket in the park like I did yesterday and see one mom coming by and wave and start a conversation and realize that like, oh, it's just a moment that I'm feeling something overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I'm figuring it out, but I think we all are, right? And that's the beauty of this, and that's the beauty of this podcast. Like, we learn something new from each person we talk to, and each time we get to sit down and connect with someone else. And that's what I get to do for my life. So I'm so glad and grateful.
I think we can have one more question.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time and give yourself, your younger self, some advice, what would it be? What would you tell her? I know you mentioned that you'd sit across her at that moment, but just
I'm like emotional thinking about that right now, because like I think I told you guys, like I actually in that like visual, and I've said it in class before, like I'll ask everyone to like visualize like reaching your hand out like across the table, and I think I would just say like everything's gonna be okay, and it's gonna be even better than you thought it was gonna be, you know, and like it's still gonna be hard, and it's still gonna be, you know, challenging at times, but like everything's gonna be okay. You know, that's what I would tell myself. And I would tell myself like, you're finding your way. You know, and we all are. So yeah, I love that question. Thank you.
It's true.
And I'm grateful to relive it here and like really be able, like today is like honoring that version of myself that would.
Well, thank you for sharing it here with us.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to you guys for having me.
Of course. Well, one more thing, because we can't go without it. We obviously aim to give our listeners the pink print to personal growth and to success. And we give them one tangible, practical tool that they could leave with every episode as a homework assignment. So what is your homework assignment for our listeners today?
Ooh, I love this. I think I would ask everyone to like find like a quiet moment. And I know maybe this is like a little bit crunchy again, but like maybe not even go into that space and like reach your hand across the table, but like start to visualize that like in a quiet moment, or if there's like a song that's playing or something, like even if, you know how we all have those like moments for ourselves and we're like either thinking or reflecting or we're meditating or doing something that we love, or maybe you're in my Soulcycle class and you get to have that moment where you even just like open the door to like see that younger self sitting at the table and like give a little wave or something. Like, and it doesn't need to be that visual, but just kind of like finding a way to like connect with that version of your younger self to kind of like honor where you've been and like appreciate how far you've come. Is that like, it's
I think that's very important to do.
Even like cracking the door open and like glimpsing in.
I love it.
I love
Alex,
you.
I love you.
And you too, Gia.
Sue, thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being so honest and sharing just all of that like raw, vulnerable advice. I think it's really helpful for our listeners. So we're so grateful to have you here today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Please tell us and our listeners where they can find you. What's your Instagram? What are your handles?
My Instagram is
What classes are you teaching? What studios?
I teach at Soulcycle South Beach Thursday, Throwback Thursday, 8:30 a.m. It's always a good time. And I teach at South Beach on Sunday at 8:30 a.m. as well. And then I teach at Soulcycle Brickell Friday, 10:30 a.m. And then Saturday, 8:30 a.m. And then I'm subbing once in a while. And everybody can find me on Instagram at Alex K. Douglas, Douglas, Alex K. Douglas. And yeah, I post my schedule and pictures of my baby. And
for the
therapy, I am closed right now.
Okay.
We are capped. But like, come to my class and you'll get a little therapeutic goodness.
Like, yes.
Yeah, you always get a little bit of that in my class too.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much, Alex. Thank you guys for listening to another episode.
Ciao, bye.
Ciao, bye.